I thought we needed a tune. Isn't this appropriate? Good pick. It's a fade out.
So that's we're professionals. Sure, no problem. Hi, we're going to play talk show host a little bit. So Amy and
Benjamin.
And we're kind of busy today, so we're just going to record this and post it as opposed to going through all of the many live stream steps. And many times it's hard to see who's with us and have a conversation. Anyway, so here we are. Like I said, we're busy, but there are a few things that we wanted to talk about, and I'm going to rely heavily on putting links in the descriptive material below for you guys to go and look more into the topics that you're interested in. Some of it is just going to be sort of an overture to stuff we'll talk about in the weeks to come. I was asked last week, someone had said, hey, Amy, you're looking stronger. What is your, maybe secret. I don't know if it was that, kind of cliche. What's your secret? So I haven't been secretive about stuff that I'm up to with health, and thank you if you think I look stronger. I generally, I think, do feel stronger most of, as I'm going on, but sometimes I feel like I have little setbacks. But I would credit it to the zone diet. That is really the thing that has made the most difference in all the things that I've been trying over the last year. And I will again put in the descriptive material below the recent interview that we did with Dr. Barry Sears. How do you feel by the, because you
terrible. No, I feel fine.
Yeah.
No. I guess I do feel an improvement with certain adjustments to my diet, but it's not like I felt terrible before.
No, and his was better than mine, I think, from a zone perspective before we even did this, right?
Yeah, okay. So I'm not really scientifically precise about it, but I think the main principles are pretty clear and not as complicated as they're sometimes presented. So and that, of course, for me is hardly a surprise. That the importance of healthy and balanced nutrition is really where it all starts. So it should be really on everybody's list of priorities right now, because if we have had anything or still have anything, it's a pandemic of obesity and
just metabolic
disorders.
Yeah.
So
because the thing I didn't realize is the extent to which you can be pretty thin, but if you're doing something ketogenic, especially over a period of time, that can be inflammatory. And we've seen thinkers like Paul Saladino, in the diet space, stumble upon this when working on himself, right? He goes on a carnivore diet, purely carnivore, for a very long time. And then he starts to realize his insulin resistance is creeping up, which is a sign of an inflammatory type condition.
Sure. No.
And so he now tapers it and he uses carbs, fruits and honey and stuff in his diet. So I think that what Sears has been saying all along is something that many people, at least I am, circling back to. And for me, because I had this weird psoriasis flare thing going on, particularly after getting the mRNA injections, I have physical evidence of healing, and I've seen just rapid healing since starting the zone stuff that I hadn't seen before. And at some point I'll throw some actual photographic proof out there, but it is really obvious. It's very obvious that you can see the before and after pictures, not doctored, etc. So for me, it's more obvious, I think, than for someone like you, where you're just thinking, how
all my trouble is hidden somewhere. No, but no. Well, so there's this very simple standard that I think tells you something, and that is, how do you feel after a meal? And many people have come to accept that it is normal to feel bloated and or sleepy. Well, you know, that's, I think those are the main things. But of course, a lot of that can be attributed to you know, a less than ideal diet. And so the being in the zone, which of course is where what it all revolves around, means feeling physically fit and also mentally fit. So yeah, I think it's a recommendation to everyone. And even though also in the interview he said, you know, you're always just a meal away of regressing into a state of inflammation. Even then, I am pretty sure making general improvements, even if not perfect, will have a general positive effect on your health. So go for it.
Yeah, for me, the ratio that he talks about between the EPA and the AA, the AAEPA,
Mm-hmm.
so arachidonic acid, and I forget what the EPA something
Mm-hmm.
type of acid.
No, don't look at me.
Okay,
don't look at me.
help me out. But what's in the omegas, right? The
Yeah.
omega-3,
Mm-hmm.
there's the DHA and the EPA fatty acids in,
Mm-hmm.
in the omegas. And the ratio between those two as indicating inflammation was
Mm-hmm.
really an eye-opener for me. So as I said, I'll do more of a deep dive on it when I have even better results to show, but the results that I have already are just remarkable. So I swear by it. And I'll put the link to Barry Sears in the material below. So good news this week. There's been quite a bit of good news. I mean, a lot of the good news has to do with a lot of people waking up, a lot of sources of information being, being made available. I'm seeing a lot of stuff that is actually being circulated out there on Twitter and apparently not taken down, that is challenging the narrative. So I think that that's a good sign. But one of the things, for example, that was brought to my attention by Rob Wolf this week is a Substack, another Substack by Matthew Crawford. And he was talking about not only some of the sort of, origins of SARS-CoV-2 in a lab, but a hypothesis that talks about Omicron also originating from a lab separately, and maybe was Omicron the thing that was, some people think, was circulating back in 2018 or so. So there's some interesting evidence about that. I'll put a link to Crawford's Substack below, and if you want to geek out, you can get into that too. But the point is it seems like every day there's some new evidence coming out showing that we have been deceived, that the people who have been controlling and steering the narrative have been deceiving us purposefully for years.
Yeah, and I think we can argue, endlessly argue what they want to achieve through deception, but anything that must be achieved through deception, I think that's a safe statement. We do not want. Yeah.
And in the meantime, they continue to push this junk, right? So they are going to approve, the Pfizer vaccine for kids under 5.
Yeah.
And as well as I do, that approve means that they're opening it up to have it mandated, coerced. I'm waiting because they're going to try to use federal funding for schools around the country as the string that they're going to try to attach vaccination to the kids for. I saw this hideous thing about they're trying to pass a law. I can't remember where it could be. It's in California. Pass a law that kids over 12 can be vaccinated without parental consent. So these bureaucrats keep pushing this. For some reason, they want to keep getting these mRNA injections into kids. And kids obviously don't need it, particularly with Omicron. There's something wrong here. Also recently, you see that the CDC director, Rochelle, what's her name? I forget her last name actually now, but does it matter?
No.
She's saying that they want to, quote, pivot the language. In other words, redefine fully vaccinated in order to, and the way that she put it is that they are getting all the number of vaccinations that they should be.
Yeah, well,
you're supposed to keep injecting yourself, even though it's shown to be unnecessary, ineffective, perhaps even counterproductive against Omicron.
Not perhaps, that has been proven that they have negative efficacy.
And that part of that will be in the Crawford post that I'll share with you guys, so you can dig down that rabbit hole if you like for yourself. In the meantime, and I'll give you a link for this as well, Bill Maher is standing up to these authoritarians and telling Fauci, you know, basically you can't tell everybody what to do. And he is also of the belief that there's no more vaccines necessary. A lot of people were trying to trash him on Twitter. As a matter of fact, I think I see it still trending on Twitter now.
Well, he had a conversation with Barry Weiss as well, and she too, and it seems to be her impression that a lot of people that she describes as liberals and progressives, but those were her words, are completely on board with her, but you know, that they're done with it. That it's been ridiculous, and you know, many people initially, when so little was clear, were completely on board with taking, you know, from hindsight, the weirdest precautions, such as wiping down your groceries, etc.
I'm so glad we never got there.
Sure. But
just,
okay,
I wash my hands a lot. I wash my hands a lot. And I remember going into the stores.
But there's nothing wrong with that.
We go in the stores, and I would be all weird about how I would open the cases, and I mean, I had this whole method.
So you know, this type of campaign, of course, it doesn't, or it hardly leaves anybody completely insensitive. But she was saying this is it's been enough, and in the, you know, the sort of the political cultural circumstances of the moment, people are afraid of speaking out because they do not want to be smeared as, designated as, or I guess lose their standing with their own group in rejecting, you know, the people who are called Trumpers, or call them they're called in the Trudeau in Canada called them racists and extremists, or they're called conspiracy theories, and so on and so forth.
Not fully French citizens, right?
So that's the situation of extreme gaslighting that we find ourselves in. Anyway, so she at least she spoke out clearly, as did Mar. So let's hope that the peeling away of this hermetic narrative has really definitively begun, and let's move on with our lives.
Definitely.
Well, after holding accountable all the corrupt cronies responsible for unleashing these.
We have to be
craziness on people.
Diligent about, you know, seeing what happened, what sort of incursions onto our rights and freedoms have taken place, and undoing every last one of them, and also putting checks in place so that this cannot happen again, because this is horrible. But it's not over yet, right?
No. But that's where you know, this historical juncture, you can look at it two ways. On the one hand, it's really scary to see how easy it has been in you know, throughout the West and the world formerly known as free, how easy it has been to impose the most illiberal of measures without hardly any protests. Of course, now the massive protests have started, and so the counter reaction might really be worth all this madness if we definitively push back, or definitively substantially push back the corruption that has been thriving throughout the West, and the crony system that basically is able at this point, with the added help of big tech, of taking hostage entire populations. And we have to put an end to that.
We definitely have to. England, leading the way. As I said this week, and domestically, politically, at least it's good. We've got the voting rights bill down. The attempt to kill a filibuster was also defeated, so that there's this potential at least to hold on in a certain way here until the elections later this year. But England, wow. I mean, I guess Johnson just decided that he needed to save face, right?
Yeah, well, save face and save his job at this point, because scandal after scandal. And
but kudos to the British, right? Because they got all of these freedoms back, but then they also still today demonstrated for the healthcare workers to regain theirs as well. And so this is where, when the Supreme Court struck down the OSHA mandate, I actually saw somebody, I'm going to not name him out of kindness, because he's been a nice person to me, but he was saying, oh, they struck this down, this is wonderful. And no, they didn't strike down the mandate for healthcare workers, but it's okay, we can let them have a little something or whatever. And I was so disappointed.
Toss them the healthcare workers.
Nothing. The requirement for anybody to take these vaccines against this virus is not justified. It is not justified. And I think if anything, what we should learn in the last couple of years too, is that we need, with respect to any of these vaccine mandates that exist about any vaccines, let's go back and reconsider them. It's an opportunity to revisit whether these should be mandated, and if so, in what contexts. You might say normatively in hospitals, certain types of vaccines should be mandated for healthcare workers, and these are vaccines that have a long proven safety record, etc. But I'm just saying, every generation that goes through a major trial and tribulation, it ends up having their attention honed and their analytical skills trained on a particular problem. And so here we are, we're living through this.
More than a single one.
And
right now.
For instance, listening to Rand Paul speak to John Stossel about mandating any vaccine, including an Ebola vaccine. And he said, no, not even for that. Let's start thinking very critically and clearly about this, because we don't want this to happen again. We don't want this to, and so, again, we have a lot of work to do still. So in the meantime, they're going to try to pivot language. They're going to approve for kids and really try to get so many people injected with this stuff. Don't know why. In the meantime, we're wondering, what is the origin of Omicron? What is it really doing? It's infecting everybody. Is that good? We think it's good from everything we know so far. We think we're all getting inoculated and that this is done. We don't know. Other things, just to give a highlight to, actually just one more before I get into the one thing that I want to draw your attention to, Jordan Peterson. So I've been revisiting some of the stuff from Jordan Peterson this week, maybe also the week before. And in particular, I'm digging into Maps of Meaning, which is the tome in which he really describes the foundation for all of his rules, his 2 books of rules. And as is typical with anything that you study for a while and then you put aside, and then you come back after some life experience and revisit it, I am getting more out of Peterson this time around than I did last time. And I look forward to talking about that and just trying to figure out, Peterson is talking about something and something that's real, and exactly where you situate it and what value you're going to take from it is I think something, obviously it's going to be individual for the person, but there's a there, and I'm enjoying it. I'm getting value from it. So that's all I'm going to say for now. But if you yourself want to go back and either maybe reread the rules books, if you want to dig into maps of meaning, maybe strap yourself in for that one, get some coffee going. But there's some cool stuff there. And then finally, the thing I want to talk about is the thing that inspired me to throw a Substack post out there last night. And I'll put the link again to that in the descriptive material. But I called the post Medicine's Last Stand. And my goal with the post was to bring people along with a little bit of, again, kind of revisiting, going back to some old material that I did recently. There's been this sort of divide among, I say, between us and some other people in the either objectivist movement or, fans of Ayn Rand. How else would you describe some of the...
No, but there are, so can we use a Prince analogy? People formerly believed to be in favor of freedoms. Is that a too tentative a definition? No, because, well, yeah, you pointed out yourself that there are libertarians too who maybe because of an intrinsicist belief in quote unquote progress in science, or for the reasons that Barry Weiss, of course, specified as I referred to before. So there's a number of reasons which are, not on the ball, but more of a social nature, of a psychological nature. And so that's been unfortunate, objectively unfortunate, and also subjectively for people like us, I guess, very disappointing, because you thought you had you shared values, and then you discover that you didn't. So that's an interesting question in itself.
I mean, there's been so many litmus tests over the years, but anyway, so now I'm on the wrong side according to some people, but whatever. So the first talk that I ever saw Leonard Peikoff give, and this is back in 1993. It was called Healthcare is Not a Right. He gave it for the Americans for Free Choice in Medicine in Costa Mesa, California. And so I was there live at that talk. And one of the things that I remember from it was a passage in which he's talking about the importance of leaving individual physicians free to think, leaving individual physicians free to think, and that how socialized medicine is going to destroy that, because there's all these other things that they are forced to think about that have nothing to do with the quality of care that they're giving their patients,
or the quality of the evidence.
Nothing, right? So I remember this passage and I said, okay, I've been thinking about it for a while, and I alluded to it in a paraphrase in a tweet once or something. I said, okay, I'm going to go back to this talk. And actually, it's interesting because when I went back to the talk, it turned out that that particular section was taken from an earlier talk that he'd given. It was from 1985 at the Ford Hall Forum, and it was called Medicine, the Death of a Profession. And I'm going to go ahead and read you that passage in a second and just have you think about it in the context of what's going on today with many doctors. Now, you agree, I don't care, you could be a doctor and you could agree or disagree with the doctors who have different views with you on it. That's not the point. But there are a number of doctors who have gone out there trying to do their best for their patients, both before vaccines were available, after the vaccines were available, using their own judgment as to the relative risk benefit of taking the mRNA experimental vaccines versus trying treatments, depending on the risk group for COVID, right? And so many of these people would say, you know, for the older populations who have comorbidities, the vaccine probably makes sense. Many of them will think that, but then nonetheless, they think that mass vaccination at least isn't called for, and that treatments are
that was sold
available.
or really pushed upon us under a false, or at least an inflated pretext, because they don't have a sterilizing effect. So that whole argument is not there.
Now, you know, as for the individual health of the patient, for some patients, it might still make sense, right? But anyway, the point is, it doesn't matter what you think about these things.
No, but
here are doctors.
Okay. Yeah, but that's the whole point, and that's where where his argument comes from.
No.
It is always an individual assessment of the doctor as
for a particular patient. Yes.
So
given their conditions and everything else,
their history, etc.
Exactly. Yeah. And so these doctors have pushed back on any mass vaccination or vaccination mandates or requirements with respect to these vaccines. They have pushed back with respect to the narrow range of therapeutics that they have been permitted, allowed, etc. I've got links to some of the, you know, kind of trials and tribulations of certain doctors with respect to these issues. You know, off-label uses of very safe drugs like ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. Whatever you think about them personally, there are doctors who have used them on thousands of patients and who swear by the results. And so, you know, I would just say that you should be able, as a doctor, to
prescribe it,
according to your own best judgment. But we have seen doctors with their hospital privileges suspended, medical licenses of doctors suspended, simply because they're choosing to use an off-label vaccine. We've seen off-label drug, you know, for treating COVID-19. Sorry, my mind went to the next thing, which is something that gets me upset, which is why I misspoke. And the thing that gets me upset is this, is that there are so-called experts who have gone out there and smeared doctors who have prescribed this, who have fought for the right to give dying patients this drug. You know, the Mayo Clinic will not let you have ivermectin. They'd rather see you die than let you try ivermectin. It is infuriating. Some doctors, established, successful, reputable, well-educated doctors, have been referred for psychiatric examination because they prescribe these treatments.
So if you look at these facts, it's the Sovietization of society, and it's incredible that we're actually witnessing this.
So tell me if, again, this is from 1985, if Leonard Peikoff was not prescient, although I think, you know, again, he was arguing against socialized medicine, and what we've got now is
fascist
cronyism.
Well, it's a type of fascist medicine where instead of marching behind this bandwagon of healthcare for all, etc., it's more pernicious, and I think that's also why this is where the water has flowed, really.
Healthcare for the obedient supporters of the narrative.
Yeah, well,
and only the healthcare that is approved by the big pharma
so
companies,
it has different banners. And of course, you know, there was a fixed banner of Soviet society too, but so they march behind science and settled science, etc. Of course, when you realize that these people are on the take, that they have their research funded by the usual suspects in big pharma.
You mean like the same guy who gave the funding to the people who wrote the paper in Nature saying that the virus was of a natural origin, even though we know now from leaked emails that it was not true. Liars like that.
Check out Jim
Liars
Jordan.
like that who are in
Check
control of all
out
the funding.
Jim Jordan. Anyway, so it's a whole corrupt system where, so instead of marching behind the flag of socialism, they found a different way, or they found what is happening is actually this combine of corporations with a leadership that loves to control people. And so you combine
elites in the World Economic Forum.
So you combine these ingredients, and what you get is mandatory prescription of unproven medication, zippity-doo-dah. So so he was anticipating a more red type of socialized medicine, and we get now fascist medicine.
One of the most interesting things is
great consolation.
I'll read it here in a second, because and again, I want you guys just to take this in, right? Because those of you who have said, oh, the doctors that are prescribing what they want, they're anti-science and they're this and that, and you've allowed that to be internalized, I think you need to listen to this. But the main difference that's interesting and that shows you that we're in a more fascist system and not the socialist system is that whereas in the socialist system, Peikoff envisioned that it was always going to be the lowest cost thing that was going to be prescribed all the time. As Pierre Corey is documented in some of his Substack, it's actually the highest cost things that are being chosen over these off-label uses of drugs and other.
So these very unspectacular, right? In a way, but of course that's also a misrepresentation. But the footwork of it, the manual work of it is ditched, and the low-cost work is ditched in favor of
$700 Pfizer drugs.
So the more it costs, the better it is. Yeah, right.
So here's Leonard Peikoff from 1985. In medicine, above all, the mind must be left free. Medical treatment, as I have said, involves countless variables and options that must be taken into account, weighed, and summed up by the doctor's mind and subconscious. Your life depends on the private inner essence of the doctor's function. It depends on the input that enters his brain and on the processing such input receives from him. What is being thrust now into the equation? It is not only objective medical facts any longer. Today, in one form or another, the following also has to enter that brain. And now I'm going to read, his version from 85, but you can imagine the things that are in the doctor's brains today, given today's current system. Here it goes. The DRG administrator will raise hell if I operate, but the malpractice attorney will have a field day if I don't. And my rival down the street, who heads the local PRO, favors a CAT scan in these cases, and I can't afford to antagonize him. But the CON boys disagree, and they won't authorize a CAT scanner for our hospital. And besides, the FDA prohibits the drug I should be prescribing, even though it is widely used in Europe. And the IRS might not allow the patient as a tax deduction for it anyhow. And I can't get a specialist advice because the latest Medicare rules prohibit a consultation with this diagnosis. And maybe I shouldn't even take this patient, he's so sick. After all, some doctors are manipulating their slate of patients. They accept only the healthiest ones. So their average costs are coming in lower than mine, and it looks bad for my staff privileges. End quote. So that's all the stuff that goes in the doctor's mind. So here you can think about, that the hospital wants you to have as many diagnosed COVID patients as possible.
Because
they get more money.
Bonuses.
They get more money if they're on ventilators. There's all kinds of perverse incentives that would, be substitutes for things in this list from 1985, right? So Peikoff goes on, he says, would you like your case to be treated this way? By a doctor who takes into account your objective medical needs and the contradictory, unintelligible demands of 99 different government agencies and lawyer squads. If you were a doctor, could you comply with all of it? Could you plan for or work around or deal with the unknowable? But how could you not? Those agencies and squads are real, and they are rapidly gaining total power over you and your mind and your patients. In this kind of nightmare world, if and when it takes hold fully, thought is helpless. No one can decide by rational means what to do. The doctor either obeys the loudest authority, or he tries to sneak by unnoticed, bootlegging some good health care occasionally, or he gives up and quits the field, end quote. So the main differences, as I say in the piece, between the system that he imagined and the fascist crony care system that we have now are an apparent preference for the more expensive therapies over the cheaper. And second, that the doctors who exhibit autonomy, independent judgment, and integrity aren't, at least today, quitting. Some of them are speaking up. They're being heroic. They're going to be marching in Washington tomorrow. But increasingly, people, all the authorities are trying to force them out of the profession. So it's not that they're quitting, they're being forced out.
Well, if you prevent somebody, a professional, from conscientiously exercising his profession, one way or another, you're going to push them out. You're going to push out the best who care about doing their job well. But maybe in conclusion, I think it would be good to emphasize that a lot of people are not aboard with these measures, and not with the way doctors, honest, conscientious doctors, are being treated, and that they're marching this weekend everywhere, all over the world. And maybe if you want to do a tiny little thing to make the world a better place, is to make somebody aware of this fact, and to make more people aware of marches for medical and general freedom are on their way all over the world, and that we have to take back our rights.
Yeah. I will put a link to the worldwide demonstration Telegram chat for anybody who doesn't know about it. It tells all the demonstrations all over many cities around the world. So you can join one of those, and or you can help spread the word. Actually just share footage from these things and make it real to people. In addition to doing everything that you can do in your life, talking to people, not wearing masks because we know that they don't do anything anymore. Smile at your fellow human being, even if they're wearing an N95, let's just get this done. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go. Thanks for tuning in. As I said, check all that material below. Lots of links there for you to take a peek at. And now I'm getting scratched by a cat. It is falling off my lap. So it's time to go. Thanks, everybody.